Book of Edds, Part 3. Your Grace, Ned said respectfully. He swept the lantern in a wide semicircle. Shadows moved and lurched. Flickering light touched the stones underfoot and brushed against a long procession of granite pillars that marched ahead, 2 by 2, into the dark. Between the pillars, the dead sat on their stone thrones against the walls, backs against the sculptures that had contained their mortal remains. She is down at the end, with Father and Brandon. He led, and Robert followed wordlessly, shivering in the subterranean chill. It was always cold down here. Their footsteps rang off the stones and echoed in the vault overhead as they walked among the dead of the House of Stark. The lords of Winterfell let them pass. Their likenesses were carved into the stones that sealed the tombs. In long rows they sat, blind eyes staring out into eternal darkness, while great stone dire wolves curled round their feet. The shifting shadows made the stone figures seem to stir as the living passed by. By ancient custom, an iron longsword had been laid across the lap of each who had been Lord of Winterfell, to keep the vengeful in their crypts. The oldest had long ago rusted away to nothing, leaving only a few red stains where the metal had rested on it. Ned wondered if that meant those ghosts were free to roam the castle now. He hoped not. The first lords of Winterfell were men as hard as the land they ruled. In the centuries before the Dragon Lords came over the sea, they had sworn allegiance to no man, styling themselves the kings. Ned stopped at last and lifted the oil lantern. The crypt continued on into the darkness ahead of them, but beyond this, the tomb stand unsealed. Black holes waiting for their dead, waiting for him and his children. Ned did not like to think on that. Here, he told the king. Robert nodded silently, knelt and bowed his head. There were 3 tombs side by side. Lord Rickard Stark, Ned's father, had a long, stern face. The stonemason had known him well. He sat with quiet dignity, stone fingers holding tight to the sword across his lap. But in life, all swords had failed him. In the smaller sepulchres on either side were his children. Brandon had been 20 when he died, strangled by the order of the mad king Aerys Targaryen, only a few short days before he was to wed Catelyn Tully of Riverrun. His father had been forced to watch him die. He was the true heir, born to rule. Lyanna had only been 16, a child woman. Ned had loved her with all his heart. Robert had loved her even more. She was to have been his bride. She was more beautiful than that. His eyes lingered on Lyanna's face, as if he could will her back to life. Finally he rose, made awkward by his weight. "Ah, damn it, Ned. Did you have to bury her in a place like this?" Grief. She deserved more than darkness. She was, Ned said quietly. This is her place. I was with her when she died, Ned reminded the king. She wanted to come home, to rest beside Brandon and Father. He could hear her still at times. "Promise me," she had cried, in a room that smelled of blood and roses. "Promise me, Ned." The fever had taken her strength, and her voice had been faint as a whisper. But when he gave her his word, the fear had gone out of his sister's eyes. Ned remembered the way she smiled then, how tightly her fingers had clutched his as she gave up her hold on life, the rose petals spilling from her palm, dead and black. After that, he remembered nothing. They found him still holding her body, silent with grief. The little Crognog man, Howland Reed, had taken her hand from his. Recalled none of it. "If I bring her flowers when I can," he said. Lyanna was fond of flowers. The king touched her cheek, his fingers brushing across the rough stone as gently as if it were living flesh. "I vowed to kill Ragnar for what he did to you." "You did," Ned reminded him. "Only once," Robert said bitterly.